Welcome, traveler in thought and time. As the weight of your day begins to lift and your mind seeks quieter shores, allow yourself to drift gently into the distant world of ancient Rome, not the Rome of triumphal arches and roaring crowds, but the Rome that lived behind and beneath the marbled rhythms of ordinary lives, the quiet toil of the unseen, the creak of oars in the dark. Tonight, we begin far from the forums and villas, far from polished sandals and perfumed banquets. We begin below the deck of a Roman slave galley, where the air was close, the hours long, and the sea always waiting. But worry not, for this journey is not to disturb you. Quite the opposite. It is an exploration through gentle imagination and subtle recollection. A way to understand, softly and slowly, the world as it once was, not in shouts or blood, but in whispers and lapping waves. With each passing segment, we will rise gradually from the depths to the palaces, from the oar to the throne, from the distant corners of empire to the beating heart of civilization. Let the past unfold at a slow and steady pace, as the details of ancient lives form a quiet tapestry across the silence of your room. Now, take a slow breath and imagine yourself stepping onto the gently rocking hull of a Roman galley. The beginning of our first chapter. Segment 1. Below Deck. Daily Life on a Roman Slave Galley. Imagine yourself descending a narrow ladder into the belly of the ship. The light fades with each step, and the scent of salt and aged timber thickens. There is no breeze, here only the faint creak of the hull, the shuffling of restrained feet, and the muted sound of waves slapping gently against wood. This is no merchant vessel. It is a novice long Roman war galley, likely a trireme or quadrireme, depending on the period. Designed for speed and maneuverability in battle, these ships were narrow, low to the water, and often manned by dozens, sometimes hundreds of rowers. Many of them were not volunteers. The benches are hard. Not wooden slats, but smooth, worn planks, stained with use and the long passage of time. The oars themselves are heavy, their handles polished by the skin of countless hands. Each rower is chained to a station, not out of malice, but out of fear of escape, or perhaps of mutiny. There's a rhythm down here, a rhythm that is never spoken, but always felt. When the command comes from above, signaled by drum or whistle, the bodies move as one. Oars enter the sea in unison, slicing through the surface like clockwork. The ship responds like a living creature, trembling slightly with each synchronized pull. But when the drum is silent, life slows to a crawl. There is no privacy here, just bodies packed tightly three to a bench, in some cases depending on the galley's design. Heat gathers in the summer, and in winter the cold clings to skin like a damp shroud. Clothing is simple, a short tunic, often threadbare, sometimes just a cloth around the waist. Skin is leathery from sun and salt. Blisters form, burst, and harden again. Meals are sparse, bread or porridge, sometimes a bit of oil or watered wine, dried figs if one is fortunate. The food is lowered from above, distributed without ceremony. There is no dining room, no proper place to eat. One eats where one rose, or not at all. The nights are restless. The ship is anchored or docked, but the chains remain. Some ships allow a rotation, freeing rowers to sleep on deck in the open air, but others do not. And so sleep comes in snatches light, uneasy, surrounded by the breath of others. And yet, in this cramped, constrained space, a quiet humanity persists. Small conversations whispered in many tongues, Greek, Latin, Punic, and more. A humming tune from a distant homeland. The murmured prayers to unfamiliar gods. The slow sharing of a fig or a torn piece of bread. Time on a galley is not measured in days, but in leagues. In commands shouted from above. In the rhythm of the oars. Some rowers were prisoners of war, others condemned criminals. A few were debtors or slaves purchased solely for this purpose, but not all were unwilling. In later centuries, some free men, desperate or proud, took the oar for pay and the promise of food. Still, most found themselves here, not by choice, but by fate. And once chained to the bench, freedom became a distant dream. Some might be freed after years of service. Others might die at sea, unnamed, their memory carried only by the currents. Above deck, the officers shout and command. Below, the rowers endure. Their world is reduced to wood, salt, and effort. But it is not endless. Even the longest voyage finds harbor. Occasionally, the ship docks. Supplies are brought aboard. Water barrels replaced. On lucky days, rowers are permitted to stretch their legs on the dock, watched closely, of course. The sun, when it touches the face without duty, feels like a blessing. Brief, bright, and gone again. There is no real end to a rower's day. There is only the next beat of the drum, the next order to move. And so life continues, not in moments, but in motion, a constant struggle, a rhythm never chosen, a sea always waiting. And now, let us rise from the dim and salt-heavy hold, back into the light. Let us leave behind the oars and the silence, and find ourselves walking among those who gave the orders, those who shaped the destinies of others from the comfort of land. Segment 2. Vespasian, from soldier's son to emperor. Now, imagine yourself walking along a dusty military road in the eastern reaches of the Roman world. The sun is high, the air dry and still. You hear the rhythmic crunch of sandals on gravel, the jingle of harnesses, and the quiet chatter of soldiers on the march. It is the year 66 CE, and among the officers commanding this particular legion is a man of sturdy build and stern demeanor, a man who, despite his plain name and unremarkable birth, will rise to the very pinnacle of Roman power. His name is Titus Flavius Vespasianus. You may know him simply as Emperor Vespasian, but for now he is not yet an emperor, not yet the founder of a dynasty. He is merely a general, seasoned by decades of military service, his face weathered by time and campaigns. He is practical, direct, and unfazed by luxury. Unlike the emperors who came before him, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian is a man who knows the weight of a pack, the long hours of duty, and the fatigue of marching under the Mediterranean sun. Born in the small town of Rete, in the hills northeast of Rome, Vespasian was not born into greatness. His father was a tax collector, respectable but modest. His family owned no vast estates, claimed no ancient pedigree. In a Rome still enamored with aristocracy, this mattered, and yet it did not stop him. Imagine him as a young tribune, standing at the edge of battle, watching the chaos of combat. He served in Thrace, fought in Germany, and later governed provinces in North Africa. His rise was slow, steady, built on reliability, not brilliance. In Judea, he was tasked with putting down a rebellion. He did so methodically, besieging cities, cutting supply lines, letting attrition do its work. When news reached him that Emperor Nero had died, the world shifted. The year of the 4 emperors had begun. One after another, men claimed the throne. Galba, Otho, Vitellius. Each ruled briefly, each fell violently. And then, with the support of the eastern legions, Vespasian made his move. He did not rush. He gathered strength, waited for Vitellius to stumble. Rome, at that moment, was fragile, ripe for order, craving stability. And so, in 69 CE, Vespasian was declared emperor. There was no triumphal entry with golden laurels, no wild proclamations. Instead, Vespasian arrived with a carpenter's mind and a soldier's discipline. The treasury was nearly empty. The empire was weary. He rolled up his sleeves, metaphorically speaking, and set to work. He restored discipline to the legions, reorganized the finances. He taxed frugally but broadly. Famously, he taxed even public latrines, joking that money does not stink, a saying that has echoed down the centuries. He also began construction of the Flavian Amphitheater, better known today as the Colosseum. Built on the site of Nero's decadent private lake, it was both a practical gesture and a symbolic one, an emperor giving the people something solid public and enduring. Imagine him walking through the construction site in the early dawn, inspecting stones, talking with foremen, nodding quietly. He was not a man for spectacle, but he understood the value of lasting symbols. Unlike some emperors, he did not believe himself divine. He retained a dry wit even at the end. On his deathbed, it is said, he remarked, "Dear me, I think I'm becoming a god." And then, quietly, he died. Vespasian's reign lasted 10 years. Not a long time by modern standards, but long enough to stabilize an empire on the verge of unraveling. He passed power peacefully to his son, Titus, an almost unheard of act in imperial Rome. In life, he rose from modest origins. In death, he founded a dynasty. And in memory, he is often seen not as a conqueror or philosopher, but as a builder, a restorer. His story reminds us that in Rome, power could come from unexpected places, that beneath the marble, sometimes there were calloused hands and dusty boots. And so, with the steady footsteps of Vespasian fading behind us, let us turn now to another kind of legacy, not that of emperors or armies, but of whispers in the sand. Clues left behind in the layers of time. End of segment to segment 3. The ghost ships of Bai, sunken secrets and submerged splendor. Let us drift now, gently, downward, again though, not into darkness, but into shimmering blue. Imagine the surface of the water, sunlight playing upon it, the delicate ripples catching hints of another world beneath. You are looking at the Bay of Naples, where the sea hugs the Italian coast in a warm, eternal embrace. But this place was once called Bajerome's playground of the elite, its version of a seaside resort. Here, senators and emperors built luxurious villas, stretching down to the water's edge. Marble colonnades, lush gardens, and mosaic floors met the sea, and sometimes even dipped below it. Today, those mosaics still exist, but they lie quietly beneath the waves. In the shallows of the bay, not far from the modern shoreline, lies an entire submerged district of ancient Bai. Underwater archaeologists have traced the outlines of bathhouses, courtyards, fish ponds, and even statues that now sway softly with the sea. No great cataclysm destroyed this city. There was no volcano, no tidal wave, only time, and the slow, imperceptible descent of land into sea. The region sits upon a volcanic caldera, part of the Phlegrean Fields, a restless patch of earth that has risen and fallen over centuries. The Romans noticed it. They even named it Bradycism, slow movement, but they did not fear it. Vai continued to thrive until the slow sinking made parts of it uninhabitable. The sea quietly claimed what the empire once prized. Imagine yourself gliding across the surface in a small wooden boat, the water calm beneath a hazy sky. Below you, in the clear Mediterranean shallows, are intricate black and white mosaics, dolphins leaping, nereids floating, vines curling. The sea has blurred their outlines only slightly, like watercolor left in the rain. Divers have explored these ruins. With delicate brushes and waterproof maps, they move among fallen columns and broken steps. They find fragments of frescoed walls, bronze fittings, and marble busts. Some have discovered remnants of Roman plumbing systems, lead pipes still twisting through the stone, as if waiting to carry warm mineral water into a now-forgotten spa. Among the most intriguing discoveries are the sunken remains of Roman ships, found just offshore, ghostly outlines preserved in mud and mineral silt. These were likely used for ceremonial processions, leisure cruises, or the delivery of luxury goods. Not war galleys or merchant hulks, but pleasure barges, floating salons for the elite. Some carried furniture, mosaic floors, even small gardens. Over time, they settled to the bottom, and the sea, patient as ever, folded them into its domain. The mystery of Bai is not a tragic one. It is quieter than that. It is a story of impermanence, for how even the grandest constructions can become part of the seabed, of how columns that once held up gilded ceilings now rest like fallen sentinels on the ocean floor, and yet not forgotten. Every so often, a boat passes overhead. A tourist leans over the side and glimpses a curved wall beneath the waves. A researcher records a sonar reading. A diver rises slowly, bringing news of a carved pedestal or an ancient anchor. The past still offering whispers through the water. The empire may be gone, but the sea remembers. And as we gently rise again from this submerged dream, we return not to emperors or cities, but to those who served them, to those whose lives, though less gilded, were no less shaped by the rhythms of Roman rule. Our next chapter awaits in the halls of the wealthy, where the slaves of Bai toiled not on ships, but in the shadowed corners of sunlit villas. Segment 4. Within the villa. The life of a household slave in the Roman elite's estate. Now, let us step softly, cala of the water, and into warmth, out of the depths and into a place where light spills across tiled floors and gardens open through painted colonnades. We are entering the world of the Roman villanade, the crowded tenements of the poor, nor the barracks of soldiers, but the estate of a senator, a landowner, a man of rank and wealth. But we do not enter as a guest. We enter through the servants' passage, where voices are hushed and footsteps deliberate. We enter as one of the many slaves who tended these luxurious halls. From the moment the sun brushed the horizon to the fading light of dusk. Imagine yourself standing quietly in the atrium before dawn. The air is cool, carrying the faint perfume of laurel and damp stone. The villa is silent, save for the murmur of a fountain, the sound of water echoing gently off painted walls. Before the household stirs, the slaves are already at work. Fires are rekindled in the kitchen, floors swept with bundled twigs, oil lamps trimmed and relit. The master's garments are laid out precisely, sandals placed just so. Towels are warmed for the morning wash. The duties depend on one's role. A cubicurious, for instance, tends to the bedchamber. Ornatresses, the female slaves skilled in cosmetics and hairstyling work, carefully, weaving intricate braids for their mistresses, handling ivory pins and jars of scented oils. Some slaves are born into the household. Others are bought or taken in war. A few, highly skilled or educated, serve as tutors or scribes. These are the pedagogy, teaching the master's children to read and recite Homer, to write in Latin and Greek. There is little room for idleness. Time is measured in tasks since spoken and understood. The cook coquus works over clay ovens, slicing figs, crushing herbs, spicing sauces. The steward, dispensator, oversees accounts, measuring grain, issuing instructions in a low, firm voice. And through it all, there is a choreography, a practiced invisibility. Slaves move quietly, attentively. They do not speak unless spoken to. Their presence is constant, yet discreet. The villa itself is a place of curated beauty. Walls painted with mythic scenes, Orpheus taming beasts, Neptune rising from the sea. Mosaic floors gleam beneath sandaled feet. Gardens spill with rosemary and oleander, the air thick with the scent of pine resin and rose petals. Peacocks wander near reflecting pools. Drowsy bees drift from flower to flower. And yet, for those who serve here, this beauty is not theirs to enjoy. The marble is cold underfoot, the laughter of guests a distant sound. Their role is to anticipate needs, to vanish when not required, to ensure smoothness in the life of another. Sometimes a slave may be trusted, may rise to become a secretary, a body servant, or even a freedman, granted liberty for loyal service. But freedom is not guaranteed, nor easily earned. Punishment exists, though it is not always public. A harsh word, a withheld meal, or worse, carried out behind closed doors. Its memory left lingering in quiet glances and cautious steps. Still, there is resilience. A whispered joke between scullery workers, a shared cup of diluted wine when the master is away, a lullaby hummed to a child that is not one's own, yet loved nonetheless. And time always flows onward. Seasons pass. Festivals arrive, Saturnalia, most joyfully, when roles reverse briefly. And slaves are allowed to dine, to speak freely, even to wear the master's clothes in jest. For a day, the lines blur, and then they return. The villa is not a place of suffering alone, nor of joy. It is a world of quiet complexity, of endurance, of adaptation, of lives lived in the spaces between commands. So as we leave this shaded portico, this silent bustle behind brocaded curtains, we step once again into the broader world of empire, not the estate, but the frontier, not the servant's path, but the soldier's march. Let us now walk eastward into the desert wind and dust of the province of Judea. Segment 5. Marching to Masada. A day in the life of a Roman legionary. Now imagine yourself beneath a pale, relentless sun. The ground beneath your feet is dry, the air tinged with a scent of sweat. You are far from Ramphar, from marble villas and shaded gardens. This is Judea, and the year is 72 CE. The desert stretches in every direction, and in the near distance looms a stark plateau, its steep sides rising like a fortress shaped by nature herself. It is called Masada. Atop that stone stronghold lies the final holdout of a Jewish rebellion, and you are a legionary in the 10th Legion, Legio X Fretensis. You rise before dawn in a simple tent shared with 7 others. The air is cold in the early hours, and the faint glow of the eastern sky marks the start of another day. You eat quickly a ration of grain porridge, perhaps a piece of hard cheese or dried fruit washed down with a sip of watered wine. Armor is strapped on with practiced ease. Larica segmentata glints dully in the growing light, its metal plates overlapping like the scales. You secure your belt, your gladius at your side, cotta laced tightly. Your shield is worn but solid, bearing the mark of your cohort. Today is not a day of battle. It is a day of labor, as many days are in the army. You march not to fight, but to build ramps, fortifications, siege engines. The fortress of Masada perches atop a plateau nearly 400 meters high, and your orders are to encircle it and to reach it. The work is long, dusty, methodical. Earth is moved by hand, stones hauled in teams. Siege towers slowly rise under the sun's unblinking gaze. Sweat stings your eyes, dries to salt on your skin. You do not complain. Discipline is strict, and the centurions are watchful. There is a rhythm to it. Pick, lift, stack, march, rest, pick again. Occasionally, your eyes drift upward toward the rebel stronghold. You can see movement, watchmen, perhaps, or a woman carrying water. They are distant, silent. You do not speak of them aloud. At midday, a short pause, a piece of salted meat, a hunk of bread dipped in oil. Your feet ache, dust clings to your throat, but your hands keep working. In the evenings, there is rest of a kind. You return to your tent, remove your armor with relief, and wipe the sweat from your brow. A fire burns low. Someone hums a song from Gaul or Dalmatia, or Hispania. Soldiers come from everywhere. You may write a letter. If you are literate, you scribble careful Latin on thin parchment, perhaps, to a mother, a wife, a child left behind in Rome. If not, you dictate to the camp scribe, "Salve, I am well. The desert is hot. My sandals are worn. We build every day." At night, the stars are bright and sharp above the camp. The desert wind grows cool, and sleep comes quickly, for exhaustion is the surest lullaby. Yet always there is the awareness that this campaign, this siege, will end in confrontation. Still, for now, there is only routine. A soldier's life is not constant gloriade, is labor and waiting and endurance. Days stretch out. The siege lines grow, and the fortress still stands. Eventually, history will record what happens at Masada. How the Romans breached its defenses, only to find silence and death within. But for you, the soldier, the moment is less about history and more about tomorrow's sunrise. Another day of marching, building, waiting. The rhythm of the legion is not thunderous, but steady, always steady. And so, from the stony silence of Judea, let us move once more across the map to the far north, where the chill wind off the Atlantic carries the scent of peat and pine. There, another life unfolds. This time, not of soldier or slave, but of a Romanized Briton living at the edges of empire. Segment 6. The Edge of Empire. A Romanized life in Britannia. Now the wind changes. It no longer carries sand or the heat of the southern sun, but something older, wilder, and more damp. You are in the northern reaches of Britannia, perhaps near modern-day York, or farther still, where the mists cling to hills and the Roman roads gleam wet with morning dew. The year is somewhere around 130 CE. The Emperor Hadrian's Great Wall is under construction in the north. The empire's shadow reaches even here its coins, its architecture, yet so does the earth's deeper quiet. The edges of empire feel different, feel re-emperor, slart, endo, riasto, riado, prela, Why are you? We it's so we you. We do you are you d t me are you we you t so you say why the way see to take the be. You live not as a soldier, nor a senator, nor a slave. You are a Romanized Briton-born of a local tribe, but raised under Rome's long, methodical hand. Perhaps your father served in the auxiliary cavalry and was granted citizenship upon retirement. Or your grandfather made offerings at a shrine to local gods, now adorned with Latin inscriptions. Imagine yourself waking before the household stirs. You step onto the stone floor of your modest villa, warmth still lingering from the hypocaust heating system below. The fire has burned low through the night, and the air smells faintly of wood smoke and damp wool. Outside, crows call across the fog-wreathed fields. Your home is simple but orderly. Terracotta roof tiles, walls whitewashed and painted with ochre lines. Side by side, an old god and a new one, neither fully displaced. Your family speaks Latin in the marketplace, but old words slip through at home terms for seasons, herbs, animals. You are Roman, but not holy. Daily life moves slowly here. You tend to sheep, or manage a grain storehouse, or oversee a pottery kiln producing amphorae stamped with your mark. Trade comes from the South, glass from Gaul, olive oil from Hispania, even exotic spices brought all the way from Syria. But life in Britannia remains quiet. The seasons press close. You dress in a woolen tunic, belted at the waist, with a thick cloak clasped against the cold. Roman sandals are impractical in this mud, so you wear sturdier shoes, hobnailed, weatherproofed with grease. You keep your hair in the Roman style, perhaps trimmed by a traveling barber once every few months, and you use ash or chalk to clean your teeth. In the village, you walk past a bathhouse, small, local, with cracked tiles and steam rising from the caldarium. Men sit near its entrance, talking in a rough blend of Latin and the local tongue. Children run past with sticks, chasing geese. There is a tavern, too. Inside, the tables are low, the floor scattered with rushes. Smoke from the brazier curls lazily overhead. You sit and drink warmed mead or rough wine, listening to news of the South. A new governor, unrest in Gaul, more coins to be minted in Londinium. Evenings are slow. Lamps flicker. The wind howls softly beyond the shutters. Then, wrapped in thick wool, you rest on a cot beneath a slanted roof, listening to the soft creak of wood and the distant patter of rain. You do not see yourself as a pawn of empire. This is simply life as it has always been, but the rhythm has changed. Your ancestors hunted in forests. You, now, calculate taxes in sesterdii and speak of emperors you will never see. At the edges of empire, the line between Rome and the old world blurs. In your shrines, in your tongue, in your memories, there is both conquest and continuity. So now, let us leave this quiet village where peat fires glow against the twilight, and take one more leap across time and space into the marble heart of Rome itself. There, we shall meet a man who changed everything, not with armies, but with law. Segment 7. Gaius, the life and legacy of a Roman legal mind. Now imagine, for a moment, the hush of a Roman library. Not a grand basilica, nor a crowded bathhouse, but a quiet corner in the legal district where scrolls line shelves, and the scent of ink, wax, and the old papyrus fills the air. Here, among the thinkers and scribes of the 2nd century, sits a man named Gaius, not an emperor, not a general, but a jurist, perhaps one of the most influential legal minds in all of Roman history. The year is around 160 CE. The empire is at its height, sprawling from the damp forests of Britannia to the deserts of Arabia. Amid this vastness, Gaius writes, little is known about his personal life. No vivid biography survives. We do not know how he looked, or what he liked to eat, or whether he had children. Even his full name is uncertain. And yet, his words would echo through law, courts, and lecture halls for nearly 2 millennia. Gaius's masterpiece is a 4-part text called the Institutes, not poetic or dramatic, but calm, precise, structured. A clear guide to Roman private law, meant to teach students how the world of property, persons, and obligations was arranged. Imagine the steadiness of his hand as he copies line after line. His ink is mixed from soot and water. His stylus moves slowly, deliberately. The lamp beside him flickers, casting a warm, amber light across the page. In the Institutes, Gaius divides law into 3 elegant categories: persons, things, and actions. Each concept unspools with clarity. He explains the legal status of the free and the enslaved, the rules of inheritance, the types of contracts, the nature of guardianship. He does not sermonize. He does not inflame. He simply records, calmly and thoroughly, the framework of Roman civil life. To read Gaius is to understand the skeleton beneath Roman society. A world where a father held patria potestas over his family, where ownership of land, animals, or even people was subject to layers of precedent, where a verbal contract spoken in the right form had the weight of law. For centuries, his work was copied, taught, referenced. When the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian undertook his grand codification of Roman law in the 6th century, Gaius's Institutes were used as a foundational model. Centuries later still, in the legal systems of Europe, echoes of his structure remained. And so the rhythm of his writing continues. Even now, in the laws of nations far from Rome's ancient heart, his fingerprints remain in the ways contracts are formed, in the categories of property, in the very logic of civil codes. And yet, Gaius himself remains quiet. A man whose legacy is vast, but whose life is a whisper. So let us pause to reflect on the nature of influence. Some reshape the world with armies, others with architecture, but some, like Gaius, with little more than ink, clarity, and a deep understanding of human interaction. As his lamp burns low, as his scrolls are rolled and stored, we gently move anin to another realm where history lives, not in documents or battles, but in fragments buried beneath the soil. We will now journey into the mystery and silence of an ancient Roman cemetery, where the past speaks in inscriptions and unfinished stories. Segment 8: Silent Stones. What Roman Tombs Reveal. Imagine now a quiet hill beyond the city walls. The hum of Rome fades. Behind you, the clatter of carts, the murmur of merchants, the laughter of children splashing in fountains. Here, the world grows still. Stone lines the path. Cypress trees rise like sentinels, their dark green needles whispering in the breeze. You are walking through an necropolis, literally, a city of the dead. In Roman times, the dead were not buried inside the city. Instead, tombs and monuments lined the roads leading out, as though accompanying the living on their way in and out of town. The Via Appia, the Via Latina, these ancient roads were flanked not just by milestones and way stations, but by memories carved in marble. Pause now before a tomb. Its facade is weathered, but the inscription remains legible. Then a name: Lucia Valaria Primigenia, daughter of Lucius. She lived 19 years, 8 months, 3 days, a life cut short. Beneath the name is an image, her likeness, carved in profile. A soft smile, hair braided in the style of the Flavian era. Perhaps she once walked these very roads. These stones speak softly, but they tell us much. We learn of professions. Marcus Tullius, Fuller's assistant. Quintus Secundus, soldier of the 2nd Legion. Flavia Domitilla, freedwoman and mother. Imagine archaeologists brushing away centuries of soil, uncovering not treasure or temples, but simple headstones. Some are humble little, more than clay tiles set upright. Others are grand, with columns, statues, even benches for the living to sit and remember. There is poetry here, a mother's grief. To my sweet son, who was taken too soon. You brought joy to my days. May you sleep in peace. A husband's devotion to Calpurnia, most faithful wife, I built this so you would never be forgotten. But there are mysteries, too. Tombs with no names, mass graves of the unrecorded. Cremation urns placed in family columbaria, but with no record of who lit the fire, who wept, who remembered. Roman burial practices changed with time and place. In earlier centuries, cremation was common, the body burned, the ashes stored in an urn. Later, inhumation became more frequent, influenced by new religions and shifting customs. Christianity, when it came, brought different ideas of resurrection, of sanctified ground, of catacombs, instead of roadside tombs. Even in death, status mattered. Elaborate sarcophagi with mythological scenes. Mausoleums the size of small temples. And at the same time simple graves marked only with a small stone or painted tile. For the enslaved, often nothing at all. And yet, despite the differences in wealth and ritual, a common thread runs through them: the desire to be remembered, to leave a name behind, to say, I was here, I lived. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it: the sun slipping behind the cypress trees, casting long shadows over stone. The air is cool now, the hush deepening. These are not grand ruins or legendary battlegrounds. These are fragments of lives, once ordinary, now distant, but not forgotten. And so, we gently step away from the tombs, leaving behind the quiet dignity of those memorial stones. Our next stop will take us not to the resting places of the dead, but to the living symbols of Roman powerware, gleaming marble met ritual, and emperors shaped the sacred. We enter the realm of gods and politics, the temples of imperial Rome. Segment 9. Temples of Rome, Stone, Smoke, and Sovereignty. Now imagine the faint scent of incense, frankincense, and myrrh, the gentle murmur of sandals on marble, the solemn hush of a space set apart from daily life. You are standing at the base of a Roman temple, its columns rising like silent giants into the sky, etched against the soft, golden light of dawn. Here, the divine and the political blend seamlessly. Temples in Rome were not simply places of worship. They were instruments of state, embodiments of power, theaters of spectacle. The gods were ever present, but so too were the emperors, whose very names adorned temple facades and echoed in the prayers of priests. You stand now before the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, the heart of Roman religious life. Its foundations are older than empire itself, rooted in the days of kings. Massive steps lead upward. Bronze doors gleam in the morning light, and behind them the sacred statue of Jupiter enthroned, eyes gazing eternally forward. But temples were not just for the gods of Olympus. There is the temple of Vesta, round and modest, where the sacred fire burns day and night. Tended by the Vestal virgins, young women sworn to chastity and service, given privileges few women in Rome ever saw. Their lives were ordered by ritual, silence, and the weight of divine expectation. Their failure, it was said, could doom the city, or the Pantheon, a marvel of engineering. Its great dome rises high above your head. The oculus around, eye open to the skylets, in a shaft of light that shifts gently through the day. Here, gods from across the empire are honored together. Mars, Venus, Apollo, Saturn. The very ceiling seems to float, weightless, yet eternal. The temples of Rome did not belong to a single class. On festival days, crowds gathered slaves, freedmen, senators alike. Musicians played. Sacrifices were made. Public banquets sprawled across the forum. But in their administration, in their funding, in their architecture, the temples belonged to the elite. 2 emperors who restored old shrines, 2 magistrates who funded altars as acts of piety and ambition. Emperor Augustus rebuilt dozens of temples as part of his program to restore Rome. He made sure everyone knew it. In his own words, inscribed on bronze tablets, he tells us, "I found a city of brick. I left it a city of marble." Every temple stone was also a monument to legacy. And yet, for all their grandeur, the temples were not always eternal. Fires consumed them. Earthquakes cracked their foundations. New religions arrive, whispers of a different God, born in a distant province, who needed no statues and no sacrifices. In time, temples were abandoned or repurposed. Some became churches, some became ruins, and some, like the Pantheon, were simply too beautiful to destroy. But even in ruin, they speak. To walk among their columns is to feel the rhythm of ancient reverence, the worn steps, the wind through broken lintels, the weight of stone shaped by belief. So we leave these holy places where smoke once rose into open skies, and statues watched over rituals long since silenced. Let us now travel again, this time to a bustling port town, a place not sacred but practical, not eternal but energetic. Let us visit the city of Ostia, where grain, gossip, and daily life flowed like the Tiber into the sea. Segment 10. Ostia, a day in Rome's port town. Imagine now the gentle rush of waves and the soft creaking of ships at harbor. The smell of salt air mingles with something richer: grain, dust, olive oil, fresh bread, and the faint tang of tar and fish. Welcome to Ostia, the ancient port city at the mouth of the Tiber River, Rome's gateway to the sea. It is early morning. The sun is still low, casting long shadows down the decumanous Maximus, Ostia's main street. Vendors are opening their stalls. Mules bray, hooves clattering on stone. A baker's oven exhales warm, yeasty steam. There is a rhythm here, distinct from the capital, faster than the countryside, but slower than Rome's restless center. Here, business and survival move with the tides. The population of Ostia is mixed and fluid. Merchants from Africa and Hispania, Greek sailors, local freedmen, warehouse slaves. The docks are alive with activity, cargo unloaded from distant provinces. Amphorae filled with wine or garum, Rome's beloved fermented fish sauce. Let your feet carry you down a side street now, away from the noise of the docks. You pass rows of insulated apartment blocks built in brick, rising 3 or 4 stories. Their walls are faded with age, their balconies hung with drying clothes. On the ground floors, shops buzz with life. A fullery for cleaning garments. A thermopolium where you might buy a hot lentil stew. A bronze smith carefully hammering out a new latch for a storage chest. Inside one insula, a family stirs. A father, a clerk in the grain office, dresses in a simple tunic. His wife tends to the morning meal, barley porridge, sweetened with date if they're lucky. A child runs to fetch water from the public fountain, passing mosaic floors and frescoed walls, chipped but still bright. You might visit the Forum next, the central square of civic life. Here stand temples and public buildings, the guild headquarters for the grain measurers and shipbuilders. The baths where daily rituals of cleanliness and community unfold. The baths are not merely for washing. They are where men read poetry, discuss politics, make deals. You step through the changing room into the tepidarium, where warm air embraces the body, then into the caldarium, where hot steam clings to the skin. The soft clinking of oil flasks, the soothing scrape of a strigial, removing sweat and oilet, is a sanctuary of routine. And then a visit to the theatre, semicircle of worn stone seats facing a modest stage. Here, comedies and farces are performed, as are religious dramas, honoring the gods and celebrating festivals. Life in Asia is not without hardship. The poor crowd into cramped rooms. The harbor brings disease and danger. Storms can ruin shipments and lives alike. But here, there is movement, opportunity. Some arrive enslaved and die free. Some are born poor and rise to run guilds. It is a place of transition, of in-betweens between river and sea, labor and wealth, Rome and the rest of the empire. As the day draws to a close, the light fades behind the rooftops. Lamps are lit. The chatter softens. You hear footsteps on the flagstones, the whistle of a boy running home, the lapping of water against the wooden piers. Ostia sleeps lightly, ready to wake again with the tide. And so we too prepared to journey on. From the bustle of this coastal town, let us drift to a more remote outpost where Roman discipline met the edges of empire. To the frontier, where legionaries watched the wilderness from behind cold stone walls.
Wow.
Let us travel northward now to Hadrian's Wall. Segment 11. Hadrian's Wall. Life at the edge of empire now. Imagine a sharp wind tugging at your cloak, the scent of moss and damp stone thick in the air. The horizon stretches wide and bleak, dotted with low hills and silent moors. This is the northern frontier, and before you Hadrian's Wall, Rome's northernmost boundary in Britain. A ribbon of stone, over 70 miles long, it snakes across the islands with, from the river Tyne to the Solway Firth. Built under Emperor Hadrian around 122 CE. The wall marked not just a physical limit of the Roman Empire, but a philosophical one as well. Here was where order met uncertainty. Civilization met wilderness. Rome met the unknown. Along the wall, at regular intervals, stood mile castles, small forts, housing garrisons of about 20 to 30 men. Between them, watchtowers kept vigil. And every few miles, larger forts loomed stone-walled, complexes housing hundreds of soldiers, supplies, and even families. Picture a cold morning in the fort of Vindolanda, just south of the wall. A soldier, let us call him Gaius, rises with the dawn. The fire is little more than embers, but he is used to the cold now. His duties are regular, unchanging. Patrol the wall, tend the fire beacons, help oversee local trade, report any movement of the northern tribes. Sometimes there are skirmishes, brief flashes of violence, but more often there is routine, a slow, constant readiness, the quiet tension of watchfulness. Imagine him stepping out into the courtyard of the fort. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke. The barracks hum with low voices. A scribe copies reports onto thin, wooden writing, tablets remarkably well preserved in the archaeological record. These tablets have revealed astonishing details of life here. Invitations to birthday parties, supply lists, grumblings about the weather. There are locals, 2 Britons, who live outside the wall in settlements known as wiki. Traders, farmers, craftspeople. Some have married Roman soldiers, started families, blended cultures. Latin and local dialects mingle. Religious practices intertwine. In temples nearby, Roman deities share space with Celtic gods. Now picture a cold rain beginning to fall. Gaius pulls his cloak tighter. His boots squish in the mud as he trudges toward the northern gate. The wind whistles through the stonework. Beyond the wall, a land untamed. Rome claims it, in theory. But in practice, the tribes, like the Caledonians, fiercely independent. Raiders, hunters, warriors. To the Romans, they are barbarians. To themselves, they are free. And so, day after day, men like Gaius watch. They mend the stone. They share gossip. They stand their posts. They wait. Hadrian's Wall was more than a military structure. It was a statement of Roman control, of defined borders, of imperial ideology. And yet, it was also a place where human lives unfolded in quiet ways, where men missed home, where children were born, where letters were written by firelight. Now, centuries later, the wall still stands in fragments. Sheep wander where soldiers once marched. The wind still sings through broken stone. And the names of men like Gaius glossed mostly, but for a few lines scratched on tablets or carved into altars left behind. We leave now this place of distant fog and steady vigilance. Let us now step into the domus of a Roman aristocrat, to luxury, leisure, and another rhythm of life entirely. Segment 12. Inside the Roman domus, the life of the elite now. Step gently through a doorway of polished stone. Behind you, the city's bustle fades, the clatter of carts, the cries of merchants, the press of the crowd. Before you, a quiet courtyard opens, shaded and serene. You have entered a Roman domus, the private home of a wealthy aristocrat. The atrium stretches out ahead of you, its open roof framing a slice of sky. Beneath, a shallow pool, the impluvium reflects soft light and catches the gentle drip of rain. This home is not just a dwelling knit, it's a symbol of status, of lineage, of Roman virtue, and Roman ambition. Imagine yourself as a guest, perhaps arriving in the late morning. A slave greets you, soft-footed and polite, offering water to wash your hands. The floor beneath your sandals is cool mosaic patterns of birds, vines, mythic scenes in colored stone. The walls glow with frescoes, crimson, ochre, emerald scenes of Bacchus, of Venus, of distant landscapes that stretch illusionistically into imagined worlds. In the tabline, the master of the house, let us call him Lucia, sits to receive his clients, wearing a fine white toga, his hair carefully oiled and combed. He is a senator, or perhaps a wealthy merchant. His mornings begin not with leisure, but obligation, the rituals of Patronus and clients, where favors and loyalties are exchanged in murmured voices. Lucius's household is extensive. His wife, Claudia, oversees the domestic economy, slaves, accounts, linen, the gardens, herbs. Her rooms are decorated with delicate paintings, her jewelry box filled with imported glass and carved gemstones. The domus itself is arranged with care. Beyond the atrium lies the peristyle, a colonnaded garden with laurel trees, statues of household gods, the soft rustle of birds in the greenery. The air here is cooler, fragrant with rosemary and lavender. Marble benches invite repose. A small fountain gurgles gently. Meals are taken in the triclinium, a dining room designed for reclining. 3 couches surround a low table. Here, guests are entertained with fine food solids from Hispania, oysters from Bai, honeyed dormice, spiced wines. Courses arrive slowly, sometimes to the strains of a flute or the soft recitation of poetry by a slave-trained performer. But this luxury is supported by labor. Beneath the calm surface, the domus is a place of hidden hands and silent motion. Slaves stoke the kitchen fires. Young boys run errands through the streets. Older servants polish silver and sweep corridors before the master's footsteps. And though outwardly serene, the life of the elite is never without its tensions. A senator may fear falling from favor. A merchant may worry about debts and shipments delayed by storm. A wife may guard her social standing with more vigilance than her jewels. Yet, within these painted walls, life continues with studied elegance. Children practice their letters on wax tablets. A philosopher friend visits, quoting Stoic wisdom in measured tones. The family's ancestral masks rest in an inner chamber faces of those who came before, watching silently from their niches. Evenings fall softly. Lamps are lit clay or bronze, filled with oil and a flickering wick. Shadows stretch along the frescoed walls, and as night deepens, the domus quiets. A final glance is cast at the household shrine. Sleep comes gently behind thick shutters, beneath woolen blankets and cool linen sheets. Now we slip away from this quiet domestic splendor. We leave the scent of incense and crushed herbs, the hush of fountains, the echo of measured steps on mosaic floors. From Rome's elegant interiors, let us travel outward to the far southern reaches of the empire, to Egypt, where Roman rule met the legacy of Pharaoh's end. The desert sands whispered stories older than the Republic itself. Segment 13. Egypt under Rome. Temples, sand, and slow eternity. Imagine now a horizon of endless ochre and gold, the sands of Roman Egypt, where time flows differently beneath the sun's relentless gaze. The desert air is dry, sharp, and warm, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and distant myrrh. Here, the Nile flows like a slow, ancient thought, quiet, assured, indifferent to the passing of emperors. Egypt, long before the Romans came, was already old. When Caesar set foot upon her soil, Pyramids had already stood for over 2 millennia. But Rome, ever drawn to power and legacy, absorbed Egypt not with brute conquest alone, but through careful layering, overlaying its governance atop a culture rich with gods, symbols, and ceremonies. Under Augustus, Egypt became a province of the empire, one not governed by senators, but by an equestrian prefect, answerable only to the emperor himself. It was too valuable, too mystical, too unpredictable to be left to ordinary politics. You might find yourself now walking along a stone avenue in Alexandria, the great coastal city where Roman marble meets Egyptian granite, and where the air is thick with learning and salt. Alexandria is a city of contradictions. Greek columns rise beside Egyptian sphinxes. Latin is spoken in the courts, but the people still whisper to Isis in the temples. Imagine passing the great Serapeum, now with its towering statue of Serapis, destroyed by time and zealotry, but in this moment still whole, still revered. The marketplace hums with life. Sellers of papyrus scrolls, dates, and perfume from distant Thebes. Roman soldiers patrol in formation, but their shields bear Egyptian symbols painted by local hands. Life here is layered, Greco-Roman by law, but still deeply Egyptian in spirit. The calendar may follow the Julian reform, but the people still mark time by the flooding of the Nile. You might meet a local priest, his head shaven, his linen robe pristine. He speaks of Horus and Osiris as if they walk among us still. And nearby, a Roman official records taxes on grain shipments destined for the capital. Egypt, after all, is Rome's bread, basketets, grain fields stretched along the river like green ribbons in a sea of desert. The peasants work with slow determination, guiding oxen through narrow furrows. Their homes are made of mud brick, their lives tied to the rhythm of water. It is a rhythm that has remained unchanged for centuries. At night, the stars emerge in sharp clarity. There is no city smoke to blur them here in the countryside. The constellations are the same as in Rome, but they bear different names, older stories. Sirius, once sacred to Isis, is watched closely. It marks the season when the Nile swells, when life returns to the black soil. Imagine a family gathered by lamplight, eating lentils and barley cakes, while the father recites a story of Anubis and the weighing of the heart. They are Roman subjects, yes, but their hearts belong to Ra, to the old gods, to the sands. Farther south, in Philae, the great temple of Isis still receives pilgrims. Built long before Roman rule, it is now protected by the empire, even as statues of emperors are carved beside ancient hieroglyphs. Roman legions are stationed nearby. But the temple rituals continue, timeless, veiled in incense and murmured chants. Archaeologists would one day find graffiti left by Roman soldiers, hear Latin names etched beside prayers in demotic script. What did those men feel, stationed so far from the marble streets of Rome? Did they feel they were in a place touched by eternity? Even in death, the cultures intertwine. In cemeteries near the Fayum oasis, portraits are painted on wooden panels and placed over mummified bodies. The style is Roman naturalistic, lifelike faces with thoughtful eyes, but the practice is Egyptian. Wrapped in linen, placed within tombs with offerings for the afterlife. Imagine those faces watching you still, their gaze gentle, their stories untold. Egypt, under Rome, is not simply conquered, is entangled. Administrators oversee trade, but the temples whisper their own truths. Taxes are levied, laws enforced, and yet dreams still follow the arc of the moon across the black land. The lines between conqueror and conquered blur, like heat rising from the desert floor. As the sun sets behind the dunes, casting the world in amber, a stillness settles. The breeze carries the rustle of palm fronds and the distant toll of a temple bell. A herdsman leads his goats along the bank. A priest tends a flame that has burned since before Augustus wore the laurel. And somewhere beneath the sands, countless scrolls of knowledge, medicine, astronomy, poetry sleep in tombs and sealed jars, waiting for a time when their voices might return. And so we leave Egypt's solemn majesty, its long shadows, its patient silence. From the slow swirl of sand and ritual, we travel now to another corner of the empire. A place less ancient, perhaps, but no less rich with texture. Let us now descend into the humble world of a Roman tavern, where laughter, quarrels, dice, and wine offer a more human kind of history. Segment 14. The Roman Tavern. Shadows, smoke, and simple pleasures. Now, let the image of sand and temple fade, and listen instead for the low hum of voices, the clink of ceramic cups, and the creaking of wooden stools on a stone floor. You are in a Roman taverna, Papina, modest and worn, nestled in a back alley of some imperial city. Perhaps Ostia, or a tucked-away corner of Pompeii. Perhaps even along the Appian Way, where travelers seek warmth and drink as the sun dips below distant hills. The entrance is unassuming, marked only by a painted sign, perhaps a bunch of grapes or a cup hand. The scent that greets you is thick with wine, boiled stew, and the smoke of an oil lamp slowly sputtering above the threshold. Inside, the air is warm and slightly damp, carrying a mix of aromas. The sharp tang of vinegar, the earthy scent of bread, and the musky closeness of too many bodies in too small a space. Imagine the light dim and golden. The walls are painted in rough fresco scenes of Bacchus and reclining drinkers, faded by time and soot. In one corner, a serving woman ladles out wine from a large earthenware jar, mixing it carefully with water. To drink unmixed wine would be barbaric after Olivin. Here, amid grime and laughter, Roman customs endure. The clientele is mixed: freedmen, dockworkers, off-duty soldiers. Perhaps a merchant avoiding his debts, or a scribe with ink-stained fingers. They speak in street Latin, peppered with slang and curses, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of dice thrown on a wooden board. A game of tally is underway, knucklebones clicking across the tabletop. Fortunes won and lost in a single cast. In the corner, a man plays a small lyre, his notes soft and unhurried. Not a professional musician, just a regular with a decent ear and a fondness for song. His voice is low, singing a familiar tune about a clever servant or a foolish husband, a song that draws knowing smiles from the patrons. You find a seat near the wall, on a bench worn smooth by years of use. The table before you is chipped but solid. A young boy, no older than 10, brings you a wooden plate with lentils, barley porridge, and a small dish of pickled fish. He moves quickly, his feet bare, his tunic too short, trying to stay ahead of the owner's impatient glances. Perhaps he is a slave or the son of the tavern keeper. It is hard to say. He speaks little and disappears just as quickly as he came. As the evening deepens, the room swells with sound. Stories are exchanged, some entirely invented. A man claims to have seen the emperor once, while another insists he was robbed by pirates off the coast of Sardinia. There is laughter, teasing, and the occasional raised voice. But there is also a strange camaraderie here. These men, poor, overlooked, and burdened, find in this dim, smoky room a kind of shared release. The tavern, humble as it is, serves many roles. It is a shelter against the cold, a place to mourn or to celebrate, to forget one's debt or to dream aloud. It is where information spreads news of uprisings in Germania, rumors of grain shortages, whispers of new taxes. It is where plans are made in low voices and where strangers become companions, if only for the length of a jug of wine. Outside, the street remains alive with night sounds, the shuffle of sandals, a cart rolling slowly, a dog barking somewhere near the baths. The tavern owner steps outside for a moment, wipes his hands on his tunic, and eyes the street with a practiced glance, fair weary. He has run this place for decades. He knows how to smooth over a fight before it begins. How to water the wine without anyone noticing. How to turn the lamp low, just enough to make the rough edges of the night seem soft. Back inside, the crowd thins. The food is nearly gone. The last dice game has ended. The winner smirking quietly as he pockets a few bronze coins. One man dozes at his table, head resting in his arms, breathing slowly. Another sings softly to himself, long out of place here but, long out of place here but, no one tells him to stop. And in this sleepy corner of the Roman world, the ordinary comes alive. There is no triumph, no marble procession, no golden laurel. Only the simple, enduring comfort of food, flame, and familiar voices. As the tavern door creaks shut and the oil lamp is snuffed out, we leave these men to their dreams, small though they may be. We step quietly into the cool night air, past the worn threshold, and walk the silent, cobbled street. There is one final place to visit before our journey ends. One final corner of Roman life that speaks of endings and memory, how the Romans, so proud in life, met the stillness of death. Let us now descend beneath the city into the necropolis, where tombs tell quiet stories in carved stone and ancient dust. Segment 15. The Roman Necropolis. Silent cities of the dead now. As the final hush of night deepens, let us turn our footsteps toward stiller ground. We leave behind the voices of the living, the bustling forums, the laughter in taverns, the measured debates of senators. We walk beyond the city gates, where the road quiets, lined with dark cypress trees and sloping fields kissed by moonlight. You are now approaching a necropolis city of the dead. The word itself, from the Greek, means city of the departed, and in many ways it mirrors the world above. Tombs rise along the roadside like houses, some humble, others grand, each bearing a name, a face, a carefully chosen phrase carved in Latin or Greek. The Romans did not bury their dead within the living city. That would have been unclean, both ritually and practically. So the necropolis, set just outside the walls, was not an exile, but an honored resting place. It was where memory was shaped in marble, where families came to remember, to touch the stone, to whisper prayers to the shades. Walk slowly now, past rows of columbaria communal tombs for cremated remains. Each niche holds a small urn, many labeled with simple inscriptions: to my beloved wife, to a faithful friend, gone too soon. Others are silent, worn by wind and rain, the names no longer legible. Yet, even in anonymity, they remain part of the eternal city. Some tombs are grand, raised by patrician families with wealth to spare. One might resemble a miniature temple with fluted columns and triangular pediments. Another may be adorned with bas-relief scenes of banquets, harvests, or mythological triumphs meant to suggest a kind of continuity. A life that somehow goes on, more perfect, more serene. Others are more modest, simple rectangles of stone with a carved name and a small shelf for offerings bread, wine, or flowers. These belonged to freedmen, soldiers, or artisans, who, though lacking noble birth, sought dignity in death. Many saved for years to afford such a tomb, for to be remembered, even briefly, was worth the sacrifice. In the catacombs beneath Rome, a different kind of silence reigns. Tunnels stretch endlessly narrow, cool, carved through soft volcanic rock called tufa. In walls lined with small, arched niches, generations of the faithful are interred. Some are pagans, others early Christians, who carved symbols of hope in the stonefish, anchors, doves. The air is cool and still, thick with the scent of earth and age. Lanterns glow faintly, casting soft halos on painted frescoes that survive in flickering glimpses. A woman with arms outstretched in prayer, a shepherd with a lamb across his shoulders, Orpheus taming the animals with his lyre. Imagine a visitor from centuries ago, descending into these tombs with oil lamp in hand, whispering a prayer for the departed. They pause before a family niche, touching the carved name with their fingers, lips moving softly, reverently. There is no fear, here only memory. For the Romans, death was not final obliteration, but a transition, a passing into shadow that could be softened by honor and remembrance. And for many, the tomb was also a message. Inscriptions might speak directly to you, the passer-by. Stranger, do not hurry by. Pause and read. I was once as you are. You shall be as I am. Eat, drink, and be merry, for life is short. To remind them of the delicate thread on which their days were strung. The Romans feared being forgotten far more than death itself. To be remembered was a kind of immortality. Imagine the subtle music of such a place, the rustling of dry leaves caught between tombstones, the distant hoot of an owl echoing across an open field, the whisper of a breeze stirring the dust. The necropolis, though still, is not devoid of life. It holds echoes, fragments, the soft persistence of human presence that never quite vanishes. Not far from where you stand lies the tomb of a baker, a round tower near the Appian Way. Its reliefs show him and his wife standing beside loaves of bread, the tools of their trade carved in detail, a reminder that memory belongs not only to generals and poets, but to those who fed the city. who worked and loved and died with quiet devotion. As the stars wheel slowly above, and the moonlight silvers the tops of the tombs, a sense of timelessness takes hold. Life in Rome was fast and full debates, conquests, festivals, and ambition. But here, in this silent city, the rhythm slows to a near halt, and in that stillness, the memory of the Roman world lingers, not in triumph. So we step away now, gently, from the necropolis, leaving its calm behind. The tombs remain, patient and unmoving, as they have for centuries. And we return, slowly, to the present, carrying with us the echo of ancient footsteps, the dim warmth of oil lamps, long extinguished, and the subtle comfort of knowing that even in the vast, complex machinery of empire, the quiet stories were never truly forgotten. And now we leave behind the Roman world. The lanterns are dim, the streets are quiet, and the echoes of voices of sailors on the oar bench, priests in temple shadows, patricians reclining in perfumed gardens all begin to fade into the gentle hush of night. Across these 15 stories we have wandered far, from the blistering benches of a slave galley to the whispering depths of the necropolis, from the stern rhythm of military camps to the soft murmur of tavern songs. We have touched the textures of daily life, felt the weight of empire, and glimpsed, in fleeting detail, the lives of those history rarely lingers on. Perhaps you are still awake, lulled by the slow current of this journey. Or perhaps, without noticing, your mind has already begun to drift wandering, as a Roman merchant might have wandered a foreign port, as a scribe's ink trails off into sleep at his desk. There is comfort in how time folds gently around us, in knowing that the struggles of the distant past, though harsh and real now, rest under the quiet layers of soil, stone, and memory. That the sweat, the dust, the firelight, the ambition, and the sorrow all fade softly like candle smoke curling into night. The empire itself, once so proud and immense, is long gone. But in its ruins, in its tomb, inscriptions, and shattered pottery, in the ruts worn into old roads by countless feet and wheels, there is a deep calm, a reminder that even the loudest civilizations grow quiet in time. So now, let yourself rest. Picture again the still harbor at dawn, the windless sails, the temple bathed in afternoon sun, the quiet alley behind the tavern where the oil lamp flickers low. Imagine yourself there, listening not for voices, but for silence, the kind of silence that hums just beneath all things, the kind that waits patiently through centuries. You are far from the galley now, far from the lash, the hunger, and the ceaseless beat of the drum. Here, in the dark of your room, you are warm, you are safe, and the world outside grows hushed. Let the dust settle, let the ruins sleep, and may you drift softly, as Rome did, into dreams. Good night.